Hello, everyone. Welcome to Conservation Happy Hour. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Emily Ringer. I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Polar Bears International, and I'm really excited to see such an awesome group of people here to explore our fall programming with us. So these events, if you've been before, you know the drill, but if you haven't, I just want to give a little bit of background. They are really hosted for our closest partners, for our community, so that we can share special stories and science and updates from the polar bear world with you. And the event really is for you. We want you to have an opportunity to see behind the scenes in some of this work and to also get your questions answered. So we really do encourage you to ask us questions. That's the fun part for us, is hearing what you're interested in and sharing what we know, and hopefully connecting deeper with you over this work that we all care so much about. So if you would like to ask a question, please do at any time, and I'm going to ask you to do so through the Q&A feature on this webinar. So you'll see the bottom toolbar of your Zoom window. There should be a little Q&A. It's a box with a question mark in it. And please submit your questions through here. And you can do that at any time through the webinar. It won't interrupt things. It just helps me store them and collect them and keep track of them so that I don't miss anyone's questions. So please do that instead of in the chat, because it's harder for me to keep track of them in the chat. And I want to make sure we get them answered. That being said, as you can see, the chat's pretty active already, which is really nice. So we do encourage you to use the chat to engage with panelists and to just give us general feedback and comments. That's great. So let's begin and dive in. As you may know, Polar Bears International called Churchill, Manitoba one of our homes. So it's one of our primary field sites. It's known as the polar bear capital of the world. And while I am not physically there right now, most of our team is. Most of the team that you will be, all of the team actually, that you'll be hearing from today, other than myself. And our work taking place here in Churchill takes place on the traditional lands of the Cree, of the Dene, the Inuit, and the Métis peoples of Canada within Treaty 5 territory. And we want to honor and respect those treaties that were made. We're thankful for the knowledge and the contributions and the wisdom of our Indigenous partners. And we are dedicated, both as an organization and as individuals within our organization, to moving forward in a spirit of collaboration and in reconciliation. So thank you so much to all of you for being here with us and honoring these lands from within or from afar. And these lands are currently speckled with sunshine and teeming with subarctic autumn life, which hopefully you'll get to see a little bit of visually. So we run multiple programs in Churchill during the fall, and this is because the polar bears this time of year are congregating in this area in anticipation of the sea ice freezing. So some of the programs, you'll be hearing about them, but high level, we have virtual educational Tundra Connections webcasts. We have our live polar bear cameras. We also have a in-person visitor center and interpretive center where we have ambassadors that are meeting with the public and with people that are coming through Churchill and sharing information about polar bears and climate change and sea ice. And we have a climate communications training program, which is actually just wrapping up now. It's called Climate Alliance. And many of our staff that you'll be hearing from today are actually up there just wrapping up that program. So the whole goal of today's program is really to take you behind the scenes of what is happening for our team in Churchill, Manitoba right now. If you follow our newsletter, follow our social media, you probably see bits and pieces of this, and we really want to show you what it looks like behind the scenes to execute these programs. So what we have done for you today is we've pre-recorded a series of videos so that we can give you a virtual tour through some of the people that are working on these programs and also some of the places. And these videos are not going to be maybe polished as you might expect if you look at PBI videos, or if you follow PBI videos. The whole point really is for us to share something more informal and truly behind the scenes with you. So you get to be part of that informal journey with us today. And although these tours have been pre-recorded, I just want you all to know that everybody who pre-recorded a tour is also with us today, so they can actually answer your questions live at the end. So without further ado, let's begin our virtual Churchill Polar Bears International Tour. We're going to start today with Amy Cutting. She is our Vice President of Conservation. And she's going to be giving a virtual tour of this building that you are seeing here on your screen. It's our staff quarters and our field workshop. And she'll also be giving you a sneak peek into sort of our storage next door. So Albert, will you please bring in Amy for us?
Hi everybody, my name is Amy. I'm the Vice President of Conservation for Polar Bears International, and I get the opportunity to show you something even visitors to Churchill do not get to see, which is the behind the scenes peek at our non-public facing building, the Mars Conservation Center, where we have our staff and visiting scientists and ambassadors staying during the tourism seasons up here to engage with visitors on climate change and polar bear conservation. We are standing in the mudroom, or the entryway of our building, and of course right now it's just the very beginning of the season. There's only a couple of jackets here and a few shoes, but during the height of the season this place is chaos and full of blue jackets. I have to have my Mr. Rogers moment and remove my jacket and my shoes. We like to take care of our assets up here, and of course we're always tracking mud and snow and ice inside this building, so we want to be careful about that. So won't you be my neighbor, and I'll change my shoes here real quick. We also take safety very seriously up here in polar bear country, and so we'll show you, we've got some places here where we store bear spray and handheld flares that we issue to everyone who stays up here to make sure that they're safe in the community. But what we're going to do is really take a sneak peek of our home away from home. Many of our staff spend weeks or even months away from home and from family, and this building, through the generous contribution of a donor, has allowed us to have really a place that we can call home when we're away. So I'm going to show you around a little bit. Come on in. So this is our living room. We have some couches to lounge in. Of course, you can see we've got a beautiful view, and we have an opportunity to gather. Friends and family and folks from the community drop by now and then for a cup of coffee or tea, and having these brick and mortar structures in the town of Churchill has created just incredible opportunities to build relationships and be a part of the community. We used to come up, and every year we would rent a property to stay in, and we'd sleep 4 to a room. We'd have to bring all of the furniture in and do the setup, and at the end of the season we'd have to do breakdown and take everything away and store it again. So the ability to have this year-round permanent structure in Churchill has just been an absolute game changer. We've been able to expand our operations throughout the seasons. We can provide housing for folks who are coming up here off-season to do research and other kinds of activities in the community. So it's really just changed the whole spirit of our work up here, and it's been really remarkable. But if we look over here, we also have a kitchen, and unfortunately poor Tracy's getting caught in the limelight here. Tracy's cooking for us. I think tonight there's only 4 or 5 people at dinner. Again, in the height of the season we can have 20 or 25 people that we're cooking for. And you can imagine that housing and food in a remote community like Churchill is very expensive. This allows us to really be super efficient and economical with how we're feeding folks and housing them. Upstairs we've got some bedrooms and bathrooms and showers for staff that are staying here. Again, for people who are here for weeks at a time, having a second home that isn't a hotel is really just a remarkable opportunity. It's a beautiful space. The architecture is really interesting. It was designed by folks that had sort of a Scandinavian feel in mind. And most interestingly, they actually prefabricated the entire house, sent it up, sent it by ship, and in 9 days we're able to assemble the entire exterior. And with a really short construction season like you see in the north, that's just an incredible opportunity. It's really efficient. It's a very sustainable building. We're very proud of that. And it's just a beautiful space for us to spend time in. Sometimes it looks like this is just one contiguous wall here, but actually we have an office space in here. And what a surprise, Kieran's here at the computer. Hey Kieran, can we interrupt for a second? So Kieran is our full-time resident and in charge of Churchill operations. And I think he's going to be talking to you about Tundra Buggy One later on during Conservation Happy Hour. But we wanted to show you our little office space here. Every morning, sometimes as early as 5 or 6, during the season, we have our morning meeting in here. We go over our daily schedule, which can have up to 7 or 8 different activities, 3 or 4 different tours coming in. Sometimes we have 7 different groups that we are trying to have touch points with when they're up here during the season. So kind of a crazy time. A little quiet though, we're just gearing up for the season.
Starting to amp up. Things will be getting a lot more busy here very shortly.
Yeah, this is really the very beginning of the season. We just have our Climate Alliance group up here that kind of helps us launch the season. And so we have some staff and we have some guests, but it's going to get real crazy here pretty soon. Okay, well this is really one of our most beautiful buildings, but we also wanted to show you one of our less glamorous spaces that we've managed to make really useful. So we're going to head out to see the Cable Shack. All right, come with me. And I'm going to put my jacket on because the wind is just roaring out there, even though we're not going very far away. All right, welcome to the infamous Cable Shack, so named because back in the dark ages when everybody had cable TV, this was the hub of cable television for the town of Churchill. After that, it became the home of internet for Polar Bears International. Before everybody had internet and Starlink, PBI actually had its own internet based here out of this building. Over time, it's become our workshop / office / tool storage. It's climate controlled, which is great. A lot of our equipment has to be stored in sea cans or storage containers, but those get really, really cold in the winter and pretty hot in the summer. This is climate controlled, so all of our sensitive electronics and other equipment can be stored here. As you can see, it's got a lot going on, but we try to keep it very organized, very tidy. We really like to take care of the assets that have been provided to us through generous donors, and I think you can really see that with the way that we take care of this equipment here. Kieran's going to be talking a little bit about Buggy One soon, and that piece of equipment has been around a long time and is very precious to us, and we're sort of babying it along, and a lot of the maintenance and tools and special equipment that we need are cared for here. So this not the most glamorous of buildings, but we really wanted folks to get a little bit of a behind the scenes peek at what it means to do the programming that we do here in Churchill. So your average visitor to town, the tourists are not seeing the inside of the Cable Shack, I assure you, but it's an important part of our operations and we wanted to share it with you. So next I think we're going to pivot and hear more from Kieran about Buggy One.
Okay, great. Thank you, Amy. Loved seeing you in hyperspeed there between the staff quarters and the Cable Shack. And this gives everyone just a little look into that field storage and that workshop, which is a really important part of our operations for everything that we are doing in Churchill during the season. And now we're going to turn from the town aspect towards the tundra. So next you're going to hear from our manager of Churchill Field Operations, Kieran McIver. And he is going to take us on a virtual tour of our roving field vehicle that you're looking at here on the screen, fondly known as Tundra Buggy One. So Albert, will you please bring in Kieran?
Hi, my name's Kieran McIver. I'm the manager of Churchill Field Operations for Polar Bears International. It's early October, which means we're starting our prep for the fall season when we start to see the bears gathering on the shoreline of the Hudson Bay in anticipation of the sea ice forming. Right now we're standing on the back deck of Buggy One. We're getting kind of geared up for the season here, so we're actually out in the wildlife management area. We're on the Tundra Buggy Lodge here at the moment. We're docked up and prepping our cameras and some of the gear that helps us to perform our operations throughout the fall season. So if you'd like to join me, we'll do here a quick tour of the buggy. I'll give you guys kind of a walkthrough and we'll chat a little bit about our cameras and some more of our operations. All right, so first off, we're in the back of the buggy. We kind of have a lot going on here. Buggy One is a little bit different than some of the other touring buggies. We have it kind of set up to allow us to spend multiple nights actually on the buggy out on the tundra. So in the back area, we have a couple bunk beds here where we can get staff or scientists sleeping. We have a little bit of our networking equipment located up in the corner here. And as of last year, we actually converted over to Starlink, which gives us internet to stream our live cameras on the buggy, which is really great. We have a stove in the corner here, a propane stove where we prepare food, and it also helps to keep us warm. The temperature gets quite chilly, obviously, as we make our way into the fall season. Food storage over here, we've got a refrigerator, washroom, lots of storage. And actually under my feet here, we had another recent upgrade, and we've now got a large lithium battery bank that allows us to turn the buggy off while we have the cams running and minimize disturbing the wildlife in the area. All right, so here we are in the front of Buggy One, and our buggy, it's again in the front here, it's set up quite a lot differently than some of the touring buggies. We do have capacity to seat up to 8 people, so we can bring out 8 guests plus the driver. The reason we have these seats so they can kind of fold up and out of the way and create all this space in the buggy is because we also like to refer to Buggy One as a mobile broadcasting studio. So in addition to the outreach, the live cams that we have on the front of the buggy where we drive around and we stream the live footage of the polar bears through the fall, we could also do outreach in the form of, we call them Tundra Connections broadcasts. So we bring out different researchers and scientists who specialize in various topics like sea ice or climate change or polar bears. We call them panelists, and so they join us out on the buggy, and we kind of set the stage here, and we do live broadcasts online for anybody to tune in. If people are interested in viewing the Tundra Connections, they can see the schedule posted on our website and then tune in throughout the fall, where we'll have a number of different broadcasts on different topics. In the background here, we've got lots of gear and lots of tech, because doing this kind of thing is complicated, and so there's usually somebody here in the background who's helping to manage the broadcast. One of the other things that kind of makes our broadcasts unique is we can have this real-time interaction with people who are tuning in to the Tundra Connections broadcast. So people who are viewing, say children in a classroom, they can reach out, ask a question online. We have a person here in the background who can kind of field those questions and pass them on to the polar bear scientist who can answer right away. And so you get this sort of unique back and forth with children or anybody who's tuning into the broadcast. So it's really great. I think next we'll kind of talk a little bit about our lodge cam setup. We've got the lodge cam situated just down there, and then we've also got some more networking equipment and a research project that we've been working on called BearDar. So if you guys want to join me outside, we can take a quick peek at that stuff. All right, so we're on one of the viewing platforms on the Frontiers North Lodge, and this is where we have our Lodge North and our Lodge South cams. So we have 2 cams here that stream all throughout the bear season, which gives people more opportunities to view the bears day or night. So above me on this telescopic mast, we have a bunch of equipment mounted. On the bottom, it's called the Trident, where we have fixed to it our networking equipment. We can actually beam an internet signal about 25 kilometers from Churchill all the way out to the Churchill Northern Study Center, and then about another 5 or so kilometers from there to the lodge for our internet out here during our fall operations. On top of the Trident, we have what's called BearDar. It's kind of the final stages of a research project that we've been working on. Previously, we had the device set up at the Assiniboine Park Zoo in Winnipeg, training the AI system to recognize polar bears, and now we've moved it out here for the final stage of testing where we're hoping to get it in front of wild polar bears. We're extremely grateful that Frontiers North Adventures is willing to allow us to conduct this type of research from the lodge.
Okay, thank you, Kieran. We had Amy in hyperspeed and you apparating to the roof of the Tundra vehicle under the BearDar. So now we were just on the Tundra and we are going to turn ourselves back to town to go to this house that you're looking at here. This is the Polar Bears International House, and we'll be hearing from our outreach specialist, Kayla McCurry. And Kayla will be taking you on a virtual tour of the Polar Bears International House, which is our public interpretive center situated in Churchill, Manitoba. So Albert, and Albert is our hero behind the scenes running the show for you. So when I keep referring to Albert, that's who we're calling to. So Albert, please bring in Kayla.
Hello, my name is Kayla and welcome to Polar Bears International's interpretive space, lovingly called PBI House. This center opened in 2019 and we're so fortunate, thanks to our generous donors, to have a public-facing interpretive space right here on Kelsey Boulevard, right in the middle of Churchill, Manitoba. I'd love to show you around. Follow me. In this space, in addition to hosting guests coming to Churchill to learn about polar bears, we're also able to open the space up to community events. We have community meetings here, Cree lessons, sewing groups, baby showers. We are able to make this space available to the community as a permanent structure here in Churchill for myriad uses. But right now we're gearing up for polar bear season, and along with that, we're gonna have a huge flood of tourists coming into town, and we're so looking forward to talking to them about polar bears, about sea ice, and what they can do when they go back to their communities to make a difference. So let's check it out. We often start when we welcome people into this space by orienting them to where they are. We're here in Western Hudson Bay in Churchill, Manitoba, one of the most southern populations of polar bears. Because it's so far south and we're able to get here relatively easily, it's one of the longest studied populations. We've learned so much about the energetics of polar bears, what they need to survive and thrive in this Arctic ecosystem, a complex ecosystem that is completely dependent on sea ice and the algae and Arctic ecosystem that forms right from this platform. This platform that polar bears use to hunt their favorite prey, seals, and humans use for transportation, hunting, and getting across the landscape. Now, this lipid-rich ecosystem fuels and powers the enormous body of the polar bear. This sea bear, Ursus maritimus, has so many distinct adaptations that help them thrive. And when we greet people here, we're so excited to talk to them about the adaptations of this bear. We have biofacts and some props that they can use to kind of get a sense of these really specialized adaptations. And we'd love to share them with people and let them get a little bit of a closer look and see up close polar bear fur that they might not see, hopefully won't see in the wild. We know that their favorite food, their favorite prey is seals. Ringed seals are one of their most popular ones. And guests in our interpretive center have the opportunity to get up close and personal to this replica seal and see what it really takes to fuel a polar bear with this plug of blubber that represents how much of a calorically dense prey item that this seal is, so efficient for powering this big polar bear body. They also can learn all about the field research that our team does and funds here in the north, both in the Western Hudson Bay and across the circumpolar north. We are always excited to talk to people about how much we've learned here in this area and these bears specifically, but also how those lessons can be applied across to different polar bear subpopulations across the Arctic. Here in the Western Hudson Bay population, we're in a seasonal sea ice ecoregion. These bears have evolved to have a feast and fast cycle where they're spending time on land, fasting when the sea ice has melted. And then once the bay freezes up, these bears head out onto the ice to hunt seals, as many as they can, to really feast on seals during that freeze up time. Now, because of how long these bears have been studied in this area, we know 40 years ago they were spending about 107 days on land. However, due to climate change, this ice-free time has extended. And in Western Hudson Bay, bears now are spending about a month longer on land than their grandparents did. Sometimes when we're talking about climate change, it's understandable that people feel a little overwhelmed. And we're quick to remind people that just by visiting Churchill and witnessing these bears and being a part of the town and understanding their story, they're uniquely positioned to go home and talk to their community. Talking about it is so important. We know people are concerned about climate change, but sometimes they don't want to talk about it because they're convinced they're the only one that does. Normalizing these conversations and empowering people to go home and talk about it with their sphere of influence, I think, is one of the most powerful things that we can do with this interpretive space and really expand the reach and impact of our work here in Churchill to places across the globe. Now that we've seen the public-facing side of our interpretive space, let's take a quick peek behind the scenes. And some of the wonderful things about this really flexible interpretive space is that we're able to use it for a myriad of reasons. One of the programs that we've been hosting all week this week is our Climate Alliance program. Zoo and aquarium professionals from our Arctic Ambassador Center network have been here learning about Churchill, collaborating on climate change effective messaging techniques and strategic framing. Let's take a peek back at some of the housing where our ambassadors are spending their time. Welcome upstairs to PBI House. Now you're really getting a behind the scenes look. This space is a little bit more of a living space. So our interpretive center downstairs each year is staffed by field ambassadors who are polar bear professionals and field scientists who commit to several weeks away from their families to come and talk to visitors about polar bears and the sea ice habitat that they depend on. And we're so grateful to generous donors who have allowed us to have this small home away from home. We have bunk beds in each of these rooms and shared bathrooms for them to have a comfortable place to be while they're up here doing this important work and spreading these important messages.
Great. Thank you, Kayla. It is always a treat to take a little tour through the Interpretive Center and really fun to get a sense for what visitors are seeing and learning when they are entering and working through the space. So this is the high-level virtual tour for all of you. It gives you a behind-the-scenes peek at the work that you, our community, are really supporting and helping us to advance. And we are so unbelievably grateful because we really couldn't do all these bits and pieces and the bigger picture without you. And this is Churchill, Manitoba, is one of our field sites. I also want to mention that we have another field site. If anyone is going to visit us in the field or you might be in one of these places, we'd really like to connect with you. So you can also find us in Longyearbyen, Svalbard, Norway. We have another interpretive space similar to what you just saw, at least in content, but visually a little bit different. It's called our Ice House, and it's a transparent dome and gives a lot of similar information for visitors that are coming through that space. That space, actually, Albert's about to pull up a picture. Here you go. You can see that space is open in July and August to the general public. So if you happen to be there, we would really love to connect with you. But if you are not headed to either of these places, we realize they are maybe far for many and difficult to access. You can also find your nearest Arctic Ambassador Center. All of our Arctic Ambassador Centers are listed on our website. We'd encourage you to take a look at that list, see if there's one near you, because you can go there and hopefully see a polar bear and learn more about conservation action from our wonderful, wonderful partners in those spaces. And then finally, I want to note that because this was recorded, informally, as I mentioned, and in one take, we want to ensure that we properly recognize the people who made all of these spaces possible. So we want to thank John and Adrian Mars, as well as Dick and Val Beck, for making the Mars Conservation Center possible. And then Danny Reese, our board chair emeritus, for the leading gift in the Polar Bears International House, really making that house and that space a reality for us. So it is time for us to move to the real reason that we're all here, which is to answer your questions. And I have received a couple through the Q&A, so I'll start working through those, but please feel free if anyone else wants to drop a few in. We would love to give it a shot to answer them. And again, just if you aren't finding it, it's the very bottom toolbar here. You'll see a little speech bubble with a question mark, and you click on that and send me your question and we'll do our best. So this first question is going to be for Marisa Kraus, and Marisa is with our team who is up in Churchill right now. She's around a table with a suite of our colleagues. So Marisa, I mentioned earlier at the beginning, I believe, that many of you are up there for the Climate Alliance program. And somebody here wants to know a little bit about that. So can you tell us what that program is and what you all have been doing for the last week? Or last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay,
we
great.
can.
I'm Marisa Kraus. I direct our conservation programs here at Polar Bears International. And it's really a great honor to be able to spend time in person in the Mars Center and PBI House with one of our staff throughout the Climate Alliance program this week. Typically, you might be used to seeing me connecting virtually from my home office in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm happy to be here with some of my team members that I don't get to work every day in person with. We did just complete the Churchill Summit of our Climate Alliance program. And Climate Alliance is a keystone program offered solely to our Arctic Ambassador Centers, in which we work with a different target audience every year. And this year, we did a pretty innovative approach working with conservation marketing, communication staff, advocacy team members, and some conservation and animal care teams, with the goal of really innovating in conservation marketing and making advocacy more approachable to constituents in our communities and who are visiting our Arctic Ambassador Centers. So this group was working virtually for about 6 months to build their literacy in polar bear natural history, climate science, and effective climate communications, of which we're happy to have the support from our partners at the National Network for Ocean and Climate Change Interpretation, NOCI for short. And then most importantly, we get to spend a week together in the Churchill Summit. And we're grateful to our partners at Frontiers North Adventures for contributing considerable resources and infrastructure so that we can have that shared space for the cohort to come together. And this week is really about creating lasting bonds, building confidence in some of the techniques that we've been learning over the past 6 months, but also most importantly is building that community of support that's so important for creating these action plans and returning home to their communities to implement the work. So I want to give a shout out to our Climate Alliance participants who are all traveling home right now across the globe. We've had institutions participating this year in the US and Canada, and also representing the UK and Denmark. So some of those folks have quite a journey home. What you don't see right now is a couple of our fantastic facilitators sitting behind the scenes while also tuning in. You know, the work is never done. And so we're so grateful for their contributions. You know, they're completing this work on top of their already very busy full-time jobs. And so we're really grateful for everybody's hard work this year. And actually, this just in, as we were debriefing yesterday, which I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do that in person, I wanted to just share a couple of common themes that we're hearing throughout these robust action plans that these folks were working on this week. And if you can hear that helicopter behind me, I'll try to talk a little bit louder. But some of the common things that emerged were these marketing and communications and advocacy and animal care team members crossing departments within their teams to work together to recommit to the shared conservation goals of our Arctic Ambassador Center network. We heard increasingly that people want to provide a space for youth advocacy and incorporating advocacy and a call to action in their messaging, and also leveraging their networks and community partnerships to further expand our reach. And I think that we're really excited to be working with this group this year, because I think they're going to be innovative in the way they share the collective impact of our Arctic Ambassador Center network, which we're celebrating the 20-year anniversary that started in 2004. So we're excited to see where we go from here.
Thanks, Marisa. That is very exciting and inspiring. You're this just in news. That's it's always heartening to hear about how that momentum is building and the action is amplifying. So this next question I think is great for Kieran. We have someone who would like to hear a little bit more about the BearDar. We saw you standing over there on the roof of a Tundra vehicle. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing with that this season and where that project stands?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Emily. And I'd just like to say thanks everybody who's kind of tuning in and joining us today. It's really great that we can get together in this way. The BearDar, it's been kind of an ongoing project that we've had running for, I think, maybe around 6 or 7 years. We've been testing it in different locations and in different ways. This summer we had it at the Assiniboine Park Zoo. And so we have this kind of mobile tower. We shipped it down to the zoo from Churchill and staged it next to the polar bears in the zoo. And the idea was, our goal, I should say, was to train the artificial intelligence that's built into the system. So after a summer there, I got a look at a lot of polar bears. We collected what we call data points. And then the next phase was to get the tower back up to Churchill. We kind of dismantled it a little bit for this application on the lodge. And we had the help of the shop team. We kind of constructed this mounting system on top of a telescopic mast. And so the radar, it's kind of like it's a Doppler radar. We have 3 panels that are fixed to what we call the stinger. And if you could imagine kind of a pie with 3 pieces, each panel covers about 120 degrees. And so that gives us, with 3 panels, it gives us 360-degree coverage. And one of the benefits of this system is it can penetrate through snow and sleet and fog. It could see in the darkness. And so our hopes are, now having this system installed here in Churchill, is we're going to see how accurate it is at detecting bears in a wild setting. Once the panel confirms that it has its sights on a bear, it could actually drive what we call a PTZ, or pan tilt zoom camera, and it can track the movement of that bear. And then it also has the ability to send a notification to somebody in the form of SMS or text message or email, letting them know that, hey, there may be a bear here. You can get visual confirmation with the camera, and then from there choose how to react. So our hopes are, after we've completed this testing this fall and we can confirm how accurate the system is functioning, the end goal is to, this system can be utilized in communities and act sort of as an early detection system. So polar bears may be getting near or close to entering a community. This will create kind of a virtual fence and alert people in the community before the bear kind of gets too close.
Great, thank you, Kieran. Yeah, that's a really exciting opportunity to keep more people and polar bears safe. So we're looking forward to continuing to give updates on that really important project. And we'll keep with your pain though, because I think this next this next question is good for Joanna, who's sitting next to you. Somebody here wants to know when roughly the polar bears came off the ice this year and when that you might expect the sea ice to freeze. So can you kind of give us a sense for what their on-land time looks like this year?
Sure. So my name is Joanna Sulik, and I'm a consulting scientist with Polar Bears International. So I get the privilege of connecting with people in the interpretive space that Kayla has introduced, and also come out here with Kieran into the buggy where I'm tuning in right now. And one of the very important things that we track every year is the time that polar bears around Hudson Bay spend off the sea ice, because understandably this is really this crucial time for them when they are relying on the energy reserves gathered through the sea ice time, and then waiting on those body reserves when the sea ice forms again. And the timing of it is very, very crucial. As Kayla mentioned, it's shortening. This year has been particularly special. So on average, the sea ice in Western Hudson Bay has broken on July 1st. That's the time where a majority of bears have come offshore on the land and started their fasting period. However, due to wind patterns and weather this year, the ice has broken up quite unevenly. So in the east from where we are, southern Hudson Bay, the ice has broken up quite early in the year, one of the record record years, where the Western Hudson Bay saw a chunk of ice holding well through into the season, making local bears more fortunate in having this access, floating, ice as a platform to hunt their seals. So we will be following the situation closely. We count the days of sea ice period in Polar Bears International House in our interpretive center, and definitely that time is one of the key stories that our educational part revolves around.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joanna. Yes, that is, I'm not sure if people remember seeing it in Kayla's tour, but we have a little whiteboard where we are keeping track of the number of days that the bears have been off the ice. And it's so important for all the reasons that Joanna just explained. So great question. We are now going to move, I think this is a good question for Marisa or Amy. Someone would like to know a little bit more about the fur gripping tracking devices. So I'll let you two decide who wants to give some more information on that project and where it stands.
Some of you may be familiar with our Burr on Fur tracking device project. And a little bit of background here. Traditionally, scientists are using GPS collars on particularly adult females to get location information and understand, how they travel across the sea ice. Those collars are difficult and expensive to attach, and there are some other considerations. We know that they don't seem to disrupt the bear's behavior, but some communities are not happy about those as a technology. Or, if you're in a tourism location like Churchill, Manitoba, the bears having collars on them don't make for as nice a photo. So we've been looking for years for alternate approaches to how we can collect that kind of information in a slightly less invasive way, and ensure that the device falls off easily. And so we've been working with 3M, the makers of Velcro, very creative folks, to understand how to create a tracking device that could be attached just to the fur of the animal, which would then be shed during their annual molt cycle. And this is where our Arctic Ambassador Centers really come into play in assisting us. And there was a comment about what exactly is an Arctic Ambassador Center. So I'll touch on that just real quickly before I hand it off to Marisa. But our Arctic Ambassador Centers are accredited zoos and aquariums across North America and Europe who demonstrate a shared commitment to polar bear conservation. We work closely with them. We have a memorandum of understanding with them about how they're going to engage with their visitors, support their staff in continuing development. There's a number of other aspects to that relationship, including participating in conservation science, doing research with bears in human care that contributes to the conservation and management in the wild. So Marisa, maybe you can talk a little bit about how our partners have helped us in developing that tool.
Right. So a phase 2 of the program was to test these tags in a controlled environment, right? And so that enables researchers to closely monitor how the tag is performing and what might cause a tag to fail. Is it the salt water? Is it wrestling around with other bears? And because we can look at these tags in a controlled setting with repeated access to a bear, we can continually make improvements. And throughout the process of this phase 2, we tested, I believe, 17 tags that were deployed at 9 of our Arctic Ambassador Center partners, which is just incredible. And I think serves as a great example of a multi-institutional study and the impact that you can make when you're working together. With that said, I'd also like to recognize that there were an additional 6 institutions who reviewed the program, approved the program, and were ready opportunistically to deploy a tag should they have that opportunity. We also had several institutions who were just really innovative in some of their husbandry training to try to work on how they could perhaps attach a tag voluntarily through husbandry training. So overall, 15 of our Arctic Ambassador Center partners contributed to that work, and so we're extremely grateful.
Great. Thank you, Amy and Marisa. I figured you'd be a great tag team on that one. So thank you very much. And great question. That's definitely one of our prize projects. For this next one, we have someone who is just interested sort of generally. I touched on a couple of the other programs that we have going on that weren't necessarily highlighted in depth in our virtual tour. And Amy, I know that you were just speaking, but wonder if you might be able to give us a quick overview, or everyone a quick overview of some of those other programs that will be happening this fall from Churchill.
Absolutely, we can do that. So yes, it's a very busy season because we're trying to accomplish a number of things all at the same time. So those of you who've been to Churchill or seen some of our fall programming know that we seem to be moving in lots of different directions during the fall. Kieran talked a little bit about our Tundra Connections program. Those are live broadcasts that we do from the field, often with polar bears in the background, talking with many of our science partners. Sometimes directly with classrooms, often just with people who are very interested in polar bears and how they can take action to help. We also, as we've also mentioned, we work very closely with Frontiers North Adventures, and they host groups up here all fall. And we interface with those groups, doing special tours, spending time with their guests out on the lodge, again, helping them to understand the impact that they make on the polar bear's sea ice home. And inspiring them to take action back in their home communities. I think all of our programs ultimately lead back to that idea that people gather here with the polar bears every fall, and they come from all over the world. And if we can help those folks understand the mechanisms of climate change and the impacts on polar bears, we can send them out, sort of seed these ideas out across the world about how they can influence systems in their own community to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So it's a really powerful tool, and it's grown over the years because it's effective. We also bring up some of our donors and contributors and faithful followers who participate in our, I believe this year it's a Tundra celebration that we're hosting. We also bring up scientists to communicate, to spend time with one another. It's amazing how often people working on polar bears in various parts of the Arctic don't get the opportunity to actually spend time together and connect. So we're doing that. This year, we actually have a community exchange. We believe that our role with polar bear coexistence is to bring people together from across the Arctic to share what they're doing to live safely with polar bears. So we're bringing some of our connections, some of our contacts from Svalbard here to Churchill to make sure that those who are responsible for safety in communities get an opportunity to see one another's programs and to spend time together. We do some deterrence trainings, but primarily let them share with one another how they're approaching the challenge. So there's lots of different things going on. We host media. Sorry, I should have added that. In the past, we've had Good Morning America up here. We've spent time with the AP. So we bring up typically have a few folks from the media come up and spend time in the community so we can help them with their narrative and telling the story more broadly. So again, it all sort of boils down to making sure that we're sharing the story of polar bears in the north and the challenge of climate change and sea ice retreat. But we do it in lots of different ways and with lots of different groups coming together here in Churchill as the polar bears are gathering and waiting for the ice to freeze.
And can we just tag team it still? Can
Sure.
I jump in there? I
Always.
see in the chat, folks wanting, one thing that they can do to help, and I would say is to talk about it. And there are a myriad of ways to talk about it, but one of those ways is to share the tools that PBI has available, right? And Amy mentioned our Tundra Connections program and live cams last year that saw over 3.2 million viewers combined. And Tundra Connections will begin this year. I believe our first one is on October 23rd. Those are free, available to the public. And it's an opportunity to inspire people to care about the Arctic and broadcast polar bears across the globe into homes of viewers that might not have the opportunity to travel to Churchill and see bears in the wild. And then you can view our polar bear live cams through mid-November until the polar bears return to the sea ice to hunt seals.
Thank you, Marisa, for highlighting that. You're right. We have several comments in the chat about how can I volunteer? How can I participate? And that really is the answer. The number one thing you can do is be out there talking about it. And our objective is to develop those tools and resources that can be shared out in whatever creative strategy you might want to use in your community, school, place of work, sharing those messages and amplifying our impact is something we would ask of all of you and really appreciate the support.
Thank you. I was just about to ask you all those questions, so I appreciate you. I appreciate you two highlighting that. So yes, that's whether or not you are asking about volunteering or asking about what really can be done about the challenges that polar bears face. engaging and igniting climate action at any scale, from the smallest community level to the largest sphere that you have influence in, is going to be majorly impactful for polar bears. So that's really what we ask you to do. And obviously we know that's not super straightforward often for any of us. And so we really try and build and offer tools that help make that more accessible for all of us, because we're right there with you trying to figure it out. We all care about it and it's incredibly complex, but we are a very strong and resourceful community with a lot of passion, and that is a very hopeful thing. We have one final question here that I am going to pass to, let me see, I just lost my tab. Please hold.
I see the question. I can take that one, Emily, if you want. It's
Oh, thanks, Amy.
well, actually, I see two more. So let's see. I will quickly answer the one. There's a question about how do we keep them from starving when food is not available? And I will just say that's a very complicated question, right? In a changing Arctic, where we're not in a linear state of change, we're in a very variable state of change. Any dramatic action we were to take like that, like supplemental feeding, could have a lot of unintended consequences. So most scientists would say that supplemental feeding or offering them food during a poor year is just not a good strategy to take, because it opens up a number of other complications for the bears. And it's a very simplified answer, so I apologize, but just it is one of those things that it likely has unintended consequences in such a variable environment. And then the last one that I see here is basically, in our work, have we found information from indigenous communities, traditional ecological knowledge is another thing it's sometimes called, but working with communities or understanding folks who have lived among polar bears for a long time. And how do we learn from them in our understanding of polar bears? And that's a great question, and it's a really important one, that we make sure that we're braiding, and that's a phrase we often use, is braiding those two types of knowing together, both what we can learn from empirical science and what people who've lived in these spaces in the same habitat as polar bears for many generations understand about the species. And so whenever possible, we're trying to incorporate those two. To give an example, we did support a study that over the last couple of years, working with the elders in the Churchill community to understand, KT Miller did this work as part of her master's, supported by Polar Bears International, trying to understand the wisdom that those generations bring, and not just from the distant past, but from even the present, and their aspirations, goals, and ideas about the future. So we need to make sure we're incorporating all of those information systems as we think about how we're going to help support and conserve and manage polar bears into the future. So that's just one example, but I'm glad you highlighted that. It's a really important part of how we move forward collaboratively as people who care about a future for polar bears.
Great. Thank you so much, Amy, for those excellent answers and for finding the Q&A tab before I could. I think that brings us to the end of all of our questions and the end of this session. We are so grateful that you've all come and spent your time with us today, for your amazing engagement and really insightful and important questions. It's really meaningful to all of us to get to engage with you, because while we're doing some of this nitty-gritty work, we really think of this as a community effort, and it's immeasurably inspiring to all of us to see you all here asking these questions, and just to know that this work is scaled, for all the participants that are here and also within all of your communities. So this is just the very beginning of this season, and we will be sending updates throughout the season. So stay tuned. However you get updates from us, whether that's on social media or email or reading the new articles on our site, we'll be sharing a lot of what's going on and are looking forward to hopefully continuing this engagement. We will have another conservation happy hour in the next couple of months. We haven't nailed it down quite yet, but everyone here will certainly get an update when that is on the books. So until then, thank you so much for making this work and these spaces that we shared with you today possible, for amplifying our impact. And we hope that you and yours are having a sweet fall. And thank you again for being here with us today. Take care and be well, everyone.